I'd been lying like this for half an hour or so, and I'd forgotten all about the ghost when, on casually casting my eyes about the room, I noticed for the first time a singularly contented-looking phantom sitting in the easy-chair by the fire, smoking the ghost of a long clay pipe. I fancied for a moment, as most people would under similar circumstances, that I must be dreaming. I sat up and rubbed my eyes. No, it was a ghost. Clear enough. I could see the back of the chair through his body. He looked over towards me, took the shadowy pipe from his lips, and nodded. The most surprising part of the whole thing to me was that I did not feel in the least alarmed. If anything, I was rather pleased to see him. It was good company. I said, "Good evening. It's been a cold day." He said he had not noticed it himself, but dared say I was right. We remained silent for a few seconds, and then, wishing to put it pleasantly, I said, "I believe I have the honor of addressing the ghost of the gentleman who had the accident with the carol singer." He smiled and said it was very good of me to remember it. One singer was not much to boast of, but still, every little bit helped. I was somewhat staggered at his answer. I had expected a groan of remorse. The ghost appeared, on the contrary, to be rather conceited over the business. I thought that as he had taken my reference to the singer so quietly, perhaps he would not be offended if I questioned him about the organ grinder. I felt curious about that poor boy. "Is it true," I asked, "that you had a hand in the death of that Italian peasant lad who came to town with a barrel organ and played nothing but Scotch airs?" He quite fired up. "Had a hand in it!" he exclaimed indignantly. "Who has dared pretend that he assisted me? I murdered the youth myself. Nobody helped me. Alone I did it. Show me the man who says I didn't." Pardon me. I calmed him. I assured him that I had never in my own mind doubted that he was the real and only assassin, and went on and asked him what he had done with the body of the cornet player he had killed. He said, "To which one may you be alluding?" "Oh, there was more than one of them," I inquired. He smiled and gave a little cough. He said he did not like to appear to be boasting, but that counting trombones, there were 7. "Dear me," I replied, "you must have been quite a busy time of it one way and another." He said that perhaps he ought not to be the one to say so, but that really, speaking of ordinary middle-class society, he thought there were few ghosts who could look back upon a life of more sustained usefulness. He puffed away in silence for a few seconds while I sat watching him. I had never seen a ghost smoking a pipe before, that I could remember, and it interested me. I asked him what tobacco he used, and he replied, "The ghost of cut Cavendish, as a rule." He explained that the ghost of all the tobacco that a man smoked in life belongs to him when he becomes dead. He said that he himself had smoked a good deal of cut Cavendish when he was alive, so that he was well supplied with the ghost of it now. I thought I would join him in a pipe, and he said, "Do, old man," and I reached over and got one of the necessary paraphernalia from my coat pocket and lit up. We grew quite chummy after that, and he told me all of his crimes. He said he had lived next door once to a young lady who was learning to play the guitar. Like a gentleman who practiced on the bass viola lived opposite, and he, with fiendish cunning, had introduced these two unsuspecting young people to one another, and had persuaded them to elope with each other against their parents' wishes, and take their musical instruments with them. And they had done so, and before the honeymoon was over, she had broken his head with the bass viol, and he had tried to cram the guitar down her throat, and had injured her seriously for life. My friend said he used to lure muffin men into the passage, and then stuff them into their own wares till they burst. He said he had quieted 18 that way. Young men and women who recited long and dreary poems at evening parties, and callow youths who walked about the streets late at night playing concertinas. He used to get together and poison in batches of 10, so as to save expense. And park orators and temperance lecturers he used to shut up 6 in a small room with a glass of water and a collection box apiece, and let them talk each other to death. It did one good to listen to him. I asked him when he expected the other ghosts, the ghosts of the singer and the cornet player and the German band that Uncle John had mentioned. He smiled and said they would never come again, any of them. I said, "Why, isn't it true then that they meet you here every Christmas Eve for a row?" He explained that it was true. Every Christmas Eve for 25 years had he and they fought in that room. But they would never trouble him or anybody else again. One by one he had laid them out, spoiled and made them utterly useless for all haunting purposes. He had finished off the last of the German band ghost that very evening just before I came upstairs, and had thrown what was left of it out through the slit between the window sashes. He said it would never be worth calling a ghost again. "I suppose you will still come yourself as usual," I said. "They would be sorry to miss you, I know." "Oh, I don't know," he replied. "There's nothing much to come for now, unless," he added kindly, "you are going to be here. I'll come if you sleep here next Christmas Eve." "I've taken a liking to you," he continued. "You don't fly off screeching when you see a party, and your hair doesn't stand on end. You've no idea," he said, "how sick I am of seeing people's hair standing on end." He said it irritated him. Just then a slight noise reached us from the yard below, and he started and turned deathly black. "You are ill," I cried, springing towards him. "Tell me the best thing to do for you. Shall I get you some brandy to drink, or shall I drink some brandy for you and give you the ghost of it?" He remained silent, listening intensely for a moment, and then he gave a sigh of relief, and the shade came back to his cheek. "It's all right," he murmured. "I was afraid it was a rooster." "Oh, it's too early for that," I said. "Why, it's only the middle of the night." "Oh, that doesn't make any difference to those cursed chickens," he replied bitterly. "They would just as soon crow in the middle of the night as on any other time, sooner, if they thought it would spoil a chap's evening out. I believe they do it on purpose." He said a friend of his, the ghost of a man who had killed a tax collector, used to haunt a house in Longacre, where they kept fowls in the cellar, and every time a policeman went by and flashed his searchlight down the grating, the old cock would fancy it was the sun and start crowing like mad when, of course, the poor ghost had to dissolve, and it would, in consequence, get back home sometimes as early as 1 o'clock in the morning, furious because he'd only been seen out and about for about an hour. I agreed that this seemed unfair. "Oh, it's an absurd arrangement altogether," he continued, quite angrily. "I can't imagine what our chief could have been thinking of when he made it. As I have said to him over and over again, have a fixed time, and let everybody stick to it. Say 4 o'clock in the summer and 6 in the winter. Then one would know what one was about." "How do you manage when there isn't any clock handy?" I inquired. He was on the point of replying when again he started and listened. This time I distinctly heard Mr. Bowles' cock next door crow twice. "There you are," he said, rising, reaching for his hat. "That's the sort of thing we put up with." "What is the time?" I looked at my watch and found it was only 3:30. "I thought as much," he muttered. "I'll wring that blessed bird's neck if I get hold of it." And he prepared to go. "If you can wait half a minute," I said, getting out of bed, "I'll go a bit of the way with you." "It's very good of you," he replied, pausing. "But it seems unkind to drag you out." "Not at all," I replied. "I shall like a walk." And I particularly dressed myself and took my umbrella, and he put his arm through mine, and we went out together, the best of friends. Thank you.